Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Back in early 2021, I was hired by Alex, a CEO I'd previously worked with at another company. We'd become good friends over the years, so when his latest startup wasn't hitting its sales targets, he reached out personally. "Sarah, we need someone who can actually close deals," Alex said during our initial call. "The product's solid, but we haven't made a single sale in 2 years." The company's story was pretty typical for a tech startup. Year one, their AI-powered analytics platform was in beta, so sales weren't even possible. Year two, they made the classic mistake of having their developers try to sell to C-level executives. "Have you seen our engineers try to pitch to CEOs?" I asked Alex, trying not to laugh. "God, don't remind me," he groaned. "It's painful to watch." With rare exceptions, these two groups speak completely different languages. Tech people dive deep into specifications and features. Buyers want to know about benefits and solutions to their problems. I've always been good at bridging that gap, translating tech speak into everyday language that helps buyers understand exactly how their needs will be met. The office was a solid 90-minute drive each way from my place in the suburbs, but Alex was flexible. "Look," he said, "as long as you keep the CRM updated, show up for important meetings, and keep the executive team updated with daily sales reports, you can work remotely." During my first month, I made that brutal 3-hour daily commute because I needed to really understand how everything worked. I spent time with each department, developing my sales strategy and building trust with the team leads. Just as I was getting ready to launch my sales plan, Alex hired Rachel Martinez as VP of Sales. She started 4 days before I was scheduled to begin meeting with potential clients. Rachel came from Goldman Sachs with an impressive track record in financial sales and marketing. "I've closed deals worth hundreds of millions," she kept reminding everyone during her first week. But she knew absolutely nothing about tech, and I wasted countless hours trying to get her up to speed while I should have been focusing on my sales strategy. "Listen, Sarah," Alex defended his decision during lunch one day. "We needed someone with connections to investors. Rachel's got that in spades." Despite the setback, I pushed forward with my plan. I spent 19 days crossing through Texas, meeting with potential clients. When I returned, I had something that made Alex's eyes light up. 17 signed contracts totaling roughly $2 million in sales. "Holy crap," he exclaimed when I showed him the contracts. "This is exactly what we needed." Fast forward 6 months, and I was crushing it from my home office. Sales were strong, Alex was ecstatic, and everything seemed perfect. Then Rachel landed a potential investor willing to put $6 million into the company. "They're coming in tomorrow," Rachel texted me. "Need you here. They specifically asked to meet our star salesperson." Seconds before the investor meeting, Rachel pulled me into an empty conference room. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into my arm. "Listen carefully," she hissed. "I told them your sales numbers are double what they actually are. Back me up on this." I yanked my arm away. "Are you insane? I'm not lying to investors." "Alex approved it," she snapped. "Just play along." "Sarah, there you are." The potential investor, Mr. Davidson, was a tall man in his 50s wearing a crisp navy suit. "I've heard great things about your sales performance." The meeting proceeded smoothly until he started reviewing my inflated sales numbers on the prospectus. "So, Miss Walker, how many units are you moving per month?" Rachel stood behind him, frantically waving her arms and mouthing, "Double it." I met her eyes and deliberately ignored her silent plea. "Currently, we're averaging 8 enterprise contracts per month," I stated truthfully. The room went dead silent. Mr. Davidson glanced between me and the document, his brow furrowed in confusion. Rachel's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. I asked to see the document, and Fortune smiled on me. "Ah, I see the issue," I said smoothly. "There appears to be a typo here. The first 2 numbers were transposed." The actual versus inflated numbers made perfect sense if you switched those digits. Mr. Davidson nodded, satisfied, and we moved on. A week later, I was in James Cooper's office, our CIO and my other direct supervisor since I straddled both sales and tech. We were discussing a new feature release when he suddenly said, "With your big tits, you could probably sell ice to Eskimos." I nearly dropped my iPad. Now, I'm no shrinking violet, but the comment came out of nowhere. That evening, I was venting to my best friend Mark during our weekly video chat. "Hold up!" Mark interrupted, his lawyer instincts kicking in. "You need to report that to Alex right away. Any decent CEO would want to know about this kind of behavior." Following proper protocol, I decided to tell Rachel first since she was my direct supervisor and we didn't have an HR department yet. The next morning, Alex called me. "So I heard about what happened with James," he said carefully. "Look, it's not a huge deal," I assured him. "Just please talk to him so it doesn't happen again." 2 days passed and nothing happened. When I checked in with Alex, he was distracted. "Sorry, the investors are still in town," he mumbled. "I'll handle it soon." "No rush," I said casually. "I only mentioned it because Mark, my friend who's a lawyer, thought you'd want to know about it. I'm not upset or anything." The word lawyer hit like a bomb. "You brought a lawyer into this?" Alex's voice rose sharply. No, I tried to explain. "I was just chatting with Mark, who happens to be a criminal defense attorney. This isn't a legal thing." He seemed to calm down, and we ended the call amicably, or so I thought. The next day, my phone rang. "Hello, this is Patricia Williams from Wilson & Associates. I'm calling regarding your sexual harassment claim against—" "My what?" I nearly choked on my coffee. "There must be some mistake. I haven't filed any claim." "That's not what I've been told," she replied firmly. And just like that, everything went straight to hell. Alex went ballistic about me causing problems during investor negotiations. His attitude set off a chain reaction throughout the company. Rachel, already hostile, now had free rein to make my life miserable. "Oh, didn't you get my email about today's executive meeting?" she'd say with fake concern after I'd missed another forgotten notification. "Maybe check your spam folder." She implemented new rules seemingly designed just for me. "Sarah, you're no longer authorized to communicate directly with James," she announced one day via email. "All tech questions must go through me first." "That's ridiculous," I replied. "How am I supposed to sell a complex tech product without talking to our CIO?" "Figure it out," came her terse response. The final straw was when she denied my pre-approved vacation. "Company needs all hands on deck," she claimed, though everyone else's time off remained untouched. During all this, I developed severe health issues requiring complex surgery. 3 specialists were involved, and the procedure couldn't wait. Working from home had been manageable despite my condition, but Rachel suddenly decided I needed to be in the office daily. "Your physical presence is required," she stated in an official email. "Daily. No exceptions." People often ask why I didn't just quit. The answer was simple: health insurance. My surgery was scheduled, and finding a new job with immediate benefits wasn't realistic in my condition. My doctor provided a medical note exempting me from the commute. "According to your original contract," my doctor pointed out, "remote work was already established as your normal arrangement." The night before my surgery, my phone rang. Rachel's voice dripped with satisfaction. "Just wanted to let you know we've canceled your health insurance." "You... what?" The room started spinning, and then everything went black. The next morning, as my mom helped me into the car for the hospital, Alex called frantically. "Let me talk to Sarah," he demanded. My mom grabbed my phone. "She's on medical leave as of today and heading to surgery. Don't call again." She hung up on him. Later, I learned their lawyer had torn them apart over the insurance cancellation. "Are you trying to get sued?" she'd apparently yelled at them. My insurance was quickly reinstated. During my 2-week recovery, my mom connected with a lawyer she knew. "They're breaking so many laws," she insisted. "You need protection." My new attorney David reviewed everything and said, "This is textbook retaliation, but you'll need to keep working there while we file with the EEOC." "Perfect," I muttered. "Just perfect." When I was cleared to return to work, another surprise waited. The company had moved offices, a planned relocation, but Rachel refused to give me the new address. "That's illegal," David informed them through the company's lawyer. Rachel finally sent directions, wrong ones. I arrived late my first day back, walking into a modern office space that looked normal except for one thing. My new workspace consisted of a single desk placed in an open area directly in front of Alex's glass-walled office, like some kind of corporate dunce corner. My sales responsibilities had vanished. In fact, I wasn't allowed to do anything. The new employees treated me like I had the plague. "Don't take it personally," whispered Katie, a new sales rep who still dared to talk to me. "Rachel told everyone you're suing the company and we should stay away if we want to keep our jobs." I spent my days meticulously documenting everything in a black notebook, every slight, every incident, every conversation. Rachel would walk past my desk, her eyes locked on my notebook like a hawk watching prey. The write-ups started flowing. "Violation, failed to answer phone on first ring," one read. "Violation, asking disruptive questions during team meetings," stated another. "Violation, requesting access to personnel file," which was completely legal, by the way. Each write-up required my signature. In the employee response section, I consistently wrote, "I do not agree with this assessment." This drove Rachel absolutely insane, so much that she actually wrote me up for writing that I didn't agree. "Sign this," she'd demand, slapping another write-up on my desk. "Sure thing," I'd reply cheerfully, adding my standard response. The screaming sessions in her office became regular events. "Do you think this is funny?" she'd shriek, face inches from mine. "Do you think you're clever?" "Okay," I'd respond placidly. "Stop saying okay, okay." Her face would turn so red I genuinely worried about her blood pressure. Everything I owned had to travel with me everywhere. I learned this lesson after catching Rachel rifling through my purse one lunch break, so I started leaving little surprises. "Having fun searching my stuff?" I wrote in a note strategically placed in my backpack. "Found what you're looking for yet?" The days were manageable. The evenings were harder. "I can't take much more," I sobbed to David during one of our regular calls. "You're doing great," he assured me. "Just keep documenting everything. We're almost there." Finally, David gave me the green light. I returned from lunch, typed a single sentence. "I resign immediately," and walked into HR. Marcus, the HR manager, read it twice, his mouth forming a perfect O. "Have a great day," I chirped, practically skipping to my car. 1 month later, we all sat in the EEOC office. Me, David, Alex, Rachel, and their lawyer. The EEOC investigator, Miss Thompson, listened as David presented our case, methodically laying out the evidence over 40 minutes. Then came Rachel's presentation, complete with her stack of write-ups. She was practically preening. "And when were these disciplinary actions issued?" Miss Thompson asked. "All before her complaint," Rachel answered smugly. "The dates are right there." Miss Thompson glanced at David. David looked at me. I reached into my bag and pulled out my copies. "She's not allowed to have those," Rachel barked. "Actually," I replied calmly, "employees are entitled to copies of their write-ups. Notice anything interesting about the dates, Miss Thompson?" Miss Thompson compared the documents side by side. My copies showed the real dates. Rachel's showed altered ones. Every time Rachel had written me up, I'd made a detour to the copier before delivering the originals to Alex's office. The silence in the room was deafening. Miss Thompson placed both sets of documents on the table and removed her glasses. "In my 15 years with the EEOC," she said, her voice measured, "I've seen numerous cases of workplace misconduct and document tampering, but I've never encountered someone foolish enough to present falsified documents that could be so easily disproven. These write-ups are not only obviously backdated, but the allegations themselves read like a textbook case of retaliation." Rachel's smug expression crumbled. "I recommend," Miss Thompson continued, "that you step into the adjacent room and determine a settlement amount. Otherwise, this will go to court, where you will lose, spectacularly." Through the thin walls, we could hear their lawyer ripping into them. "You lied to me!" she shouted. "Falsified documents? To the EEOC? Are you out of your minds?" They returned with a $50,000 settlement offer, which we accepted. In the parking lot, David and I celebrated with an impromptu victory dance. Looking up, I saw Rachel through the window, mascara running down her face. She'd just been fired. That was my year one revenge. Most people would let it go after that, but Rachel was special. I maintained a quiet hatred, keeping tabs on her new venture, a financial marketing firm she started after getting fired. Since 2022, I've executed what I call Project Annual Chaos. Every year, I harvest all employee email addresses and phone numbers from her company website. Then I unleash digital hell. Want more information about online degrees? Click. Insurance quotes? Click. Free consultations? Click, click, click. Recently, I discovered email bombing services. They instantly subscribe addresses to thousands of newsletters and marketing lists. The inbox bombardment is relentless and permanent. Each year when I return to collect new contact information, all the email addresses have changed. The latest twist came through my cousin Jamie, who took a job in Rachel's building last year. She befriended Rachel's receptionist, Lisa. "The whole place is a mess again," Lisa complained during their lunch last month. "Third time this year we've had to change all our email addresses. It is losing their minds." "That sounds awful," Jamie sympathized, texting me under the table. "The boss has changed her cell number 3 times, Lisa continued. "She gets hundreds of calls and texts whenever this happens. We just lost the Morgan account. They said we seemed too disorganized. Every night I think about Rachel's company in constant turmoil, her employees frustrated, her business suffering, and I sleep like a baby. Some might call it petty. I call it justice served cold, one email subscription at a time. The next one is an entitled people's story. We bought our dream home in Pine Valley Estates 2 years ago. It's a beautiful neighborhood with well-maintained houses, tree-lined streets, and friendly neighbors. Like many upscale communities, we have an homeowners association that handles maintenance of common areas and enforces community standards. I never had major issues with them until last summer, when everything changed. It started when I noticed a small camera mounted on a pole at the edge of my backyard. At first, I thought it might be something the city installed, but it was pointed directly at my property. I called the city and they confirmed it wasn't theirs. That's when I decided to attend the next Homeowners Association meeting to get answers. The meeting was held in our community center and I arrived early to make sure I could speak. When the floor opened for resident comments, I raised my hand. I'd like to know about the surveillance camera that was installed in my backyard without my knowledge or consent, I said. Barbara Matthews, our Homeowners Association president, smiled condescendingly. Yes, the board approved a new security system last month. We've installed cameras throughout the neighborhood to deter crime and maintain property values. But this camera is on my private property, recording my family's activities in our backyard, I protested. The cameras are installed on Homeowners Association easements, which are clearly defined in your deed, Barbara replied. The board has full authority to utilize those easements as we see fit. I looked around the room and saw other homeowners shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Has everyone here been informed about cameras recording their backyards? Several people shook their heads. Tom Wilson, my next-door neighbor, stood up. I have one too, and I never received any notice. Barbara waved her hand dismissively. The decision was noted in last month's meeting minutes, which are available on our website. Now, let's move on to other business. I wasn't about to let this go. After the meeting, I gathered with several neighbors in the parking lot. We discovered that cameras had been installed in about 30 backyards, all without direct notification to the homeowners. That night, I started researching. I learned that while homeowners associations do have certain rights regarding easements, there are strict limits on surveillance and privacy invasion. I contacted several lawyers who specialize in homeowners association disputes and property law. The next day, I sent a certified letter to the Homeowners Association Board demanding the immediate removal of all cameras on private property and copies of all recordings made of my property. I cited specific state privacy laws and threatened legal action if they didn't comply within 48 hours. Their response came from their attorney, claiming the cameras were legally installed and necessary for community security. They refused to remove them or provide the recordings. I called Sarah Chen, a lawyer who'd impressed me during our consultation. They're not backing down, I told her. What's our next step? They're violating multiple privacy laws, Sarah explained. First, they're recording private areas where residents have a reasonable expectation of privacy. Second, they failed to provide proper notice or obtain consent. Third, they're likely violating state wiretapping laws if these cameras record audio. We can file a class action lawsuit on behalf of all affected homeowners. I spent the next week going door to door, explaining the situation to my neighbors. Many were shocked to learn about the cameras, and some discovered cameras they hadn't even noticed. 25 homeowners agreed to join the lawsuit. When we filed the suit, local media picked up the story. A reporter from Channel 7 interviewed several homeowners, including me. How did you feel when you discovered you were being recorded in your private backyard? She asked. Violated, I replied. My children play in that yard. We have family gatherings there. No one should be secretly recording those private moments. The story aired on the evening news, and within days, other homeowners associations across the state started contacting us. Apparently, this was becoming a trend, with homeowners associations installing surveillance systems without proper consent or consideration of privacy rights. Barbara and the board tried to damage control. They sent out a community-wide email claiming the cameras were for our protection and accusing us of endangering community safety. But their message backfired when someone leaked internal board emails showing they'd discussed using the cameras to monitor for minor rule violations like unauthorized garden ornaments and unapproved paint colors. Our lawsuit gained momentum when we discovered the company that installed the cameras had warned the board about potential privacy issues. They'd recommended notifying homeowners and obtaining consent, but the board had explicitly chosen not to do so to avoid unnecessary debate. During discovery, we also learned the cameras were being monitored by a third-party security company with no privacy policies in place regarding the handling of recordings. Some footage had been stored on unsecured servers accessible to multiple employees. The case went to mediation, but the board remained stubborn. Their attorney argued that the Homeowners Association bylaws gave them broad authority to implement security measures. However, the mediator pointed out that this authority didn't override state privacy laws or constitutional rights. Your clients installed surveillance equipment targeting private areas where people have a reasonable expectation of privacy, the mediator explained. No Homeowners Association bylaw can override that basic right. Still, the board refused to settle. They seemed convinced they could win in court despite mounting evidence against them. That's when we discovered something that would break the case wide open. A former board member contacted our lawyer with screenshots of text messages showing Barbara and several other board members joking about watching residents through the cameras. They'd been using the system to spy on specific homeowners they disliked, keeping logs of their activities and planning to use the information for harassment. Finally caught Mrs. Johnson sunbathing, one text read. Wait until her husband sees these screenshots. When we presented this evidence, the board's attorney immediately requested a new mediation session. They knew they couldn't take this to trial. The settlement negotiations were intense. The board initially offered to remove the cameras and pay $50,000 in damages to be split among the plaintiffs. We countered with a demand for $1 million, plus mandatory changes to the Homeowners Association's governance. Your clients violated federal and state privacy laws, created a hostile living environment, and abused their authority, Sarah argued. The damages could be much higher if we go to trial, especially given the evidence of intentional misconduct. After 12 hours of negotiation, we reached an agreement. The Homeowners Association would pay $1 million in damages to be split among the affected homeowners, remove all cameras from private property within 24 hours, destroy all existing recordings, implement new bylaws requiring homeowner approval for any future surveillance equipment, replace the entire board with new elections supervised by an independent party, pay all legal fees and costs. The settlement also included a confidentiality waiver allowing us to discuss the case publicly, which was important for setting a precedent for other communities facing similar issues. You won't believe what else we found in the recordings, Sarah told me after the agreement was signed. They were using facial recognition software to track visitors and monitoring political signs in people's yards. It was full-on surveillance state stuff. The cameras came down the next day. Barbara and 3 other board members resigned immediately, though they still tried to defend their actions in a final email to the community. We acted in what we believed were the best interests of the community, Barbara wrote. We regret any upset this has caused. The aftermath of our victory brought significant changes to Pine Valley Estates and sparked a wider conversation about homeowners association overreach. The story made national news, and I started receiving calls from homeowners across the country facing similar issues. Our settlement money arrived about 6 weeks after the agreement. Each affected household received approximately $40,000 after legal fees. Most of us invested the money back into our properties, making improvements we'd previously been denied by the old board. The election for the new Homeowners Association board was held under the supervision of an independent property management company. I was encouraged to run but declined. I wanted to ensure the changes we fought for were implemented properly without appearing to have a personal agenda. The new board's first action was to create a Homeowners Bill of Rights, which explicitly outlined privacy protections and required resident approval for any surveillance or monitoring systems. They also established a transparent appeals process for architectural changes and rule violations. Barbara and her allies didn't go quietly, though. They created a Facebook group called Save Pine Valley, where they continued to claim they were protecting property values. The group lost steam when one of the former board members had a crisis of conscience and posted a full confession about their surveillance activities. We were watching people in their most private moments, she wrote. We had cameras aimed at bedroom windows, bathroom windows, and backyard pools. We were no better than peeping Toms with fancy equipment. I'm deeply ashamed of my participation. The confession led to criminal investigations. While no charges were ultimately filed due to statute limitations and jurisdictional issues, the investigation revealed even more disturbing details about the scope of the surveillance. 3 months after the settlement, I received an unexpected visit from a detective. We found evidence that the board was selling access to the camera feeds, he explained. Several subscribers paid monthly fees to view live streams from specific properties. This revelation led to a second lawsuit, this time against the individual board members personally. That case is still pending, but several former members have already agreed to settle rather than face discovery. The impact of our case extended far beyond our community. The state legislature used our story as an example when drafting new laws regulating homeowners association authority. The Pine Valley Privacy Act now requires explicit homeowner consent for any surveillance equipment installation and establishes criminal penalties for unauthorized monitoring. Sarah Chen, our attorney, has become a sought-after expert on homeowners association privacy rights. She's handling similar cases in 12 states and consulting with lawmakers on privacy protection legislation. Your case exposed a growing problem, she told me recently. Homeowners associations are increasingly using technology to monitor residents, often without proper safeguards or consent. The Pine Valley case set an important precedent for protecting homeowner privacy rights. Last week, I attended my first homeowners association meeting since the settlement. The difference was striking. Instead of Barbara's authoritarian style, the new board actively encouraged resident participation and transparency. All major decisions are now put to a community vote, and meeting minutes are detailed and promptly published. The most satisfying moment came when a resident asked about installing security cameras in the community park. The board president explained the new approval process, which requires clear documentation of the camera locations, written consent from affected homeowners, and strict guidelines for data storage and access. "We learned an expensive lesson about respecting privacy rights," she said. "This community will never again prioritize surveillance over resident rights." As for Barbara and her former board members, most of them have moved away. Those who stayed keep a low profile, though I occasionally see Barbara walking her dog. She always crosses the street to avoid passing my house. The cameras are gone, but they left a lasting impact on our community. We're more vigilant now about protecting our rights and more engaged in community governance. The Homeowners Association still maintains our neighborhood standards, but with respect for individual privacy and property rights. Looking back, I'm proud we took a stand. It would have been easier to accept the invasion of privacy, to believe the board's claims about security and property values. But some rights are worth fighting for, and privacy in our own homes is certainly one of them. The settlement money was nice, but the real victory was establishing that homeowners associations can't override basic constitutional rights. Our case has become a blueprint for other communities fighting similar battles, and I regularly consult with homeowners facing homeowners association overreach. Last month, I installed a small fountain in my backyard, something the old board would have never approved. As I sit there listening to the water, enjoying my truly private space, I think about how close we came to losing that privacy. The cameras are gone, but the lesson remains. Vigilance is the price of liberty, even in your own backyard. The Pine Valley Privacy Act is now being considered by several other state legislatures, and our case is frequently cited in homeowners association disputes nationwide. We showed that homeowners can successfully challenge homeowners association overreach when they stand together, and that's a legacy worth far more than any settlement check. As for me, I've become something of an expert on homeowners association law and privacy rights. I maintain a blog helping other homeowners understand their rights and organize against invasive policies. Our victory at Pine Valley was just the beginning of a larger movement to reform homeowners association governance and protect homeowner privacy nationwide. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just winning, it's changing the system that allowed the abuse to happen in the first place. That's exactly what we did at Pine Valley Estates, and communities across the country are better for it. The next one is a malicious compliances story. I work at an amusement park and we have this ride called Moby Dick. This ride is 100% controlled by the operator. A couple of weeks ago, this woman and her friend came up to my ride making fun of one of the kids that were on the ride. She was saying so many hateful things about how they look. Without even looking at her, I told her to stop, and this is how it went. Me: "You're literally talking about a 7-year-old like that. You need to stop or you will not be allowed on the rides." Karen: "But it's true. Look at them." Me: "Don't disrespect other guests. Please, it's not okay." Karen's friend: "Stop, Karen, before you get us in trouble again." Karen: "Whatever." When the ride was finished, I start letting the next group of people in. I say, "Do not pull down on the bars. Pick any seat you'd like." To everyone as they walk in, since pulling on the bars can break the seats over time. I let a group of young boys in before Karen's group, and they sat at the end seats. Karen marches over to the kids, yelling at them to get out of her seat, and that she paid to sit at the end. Me: "Miss, please stop yelling at the kids, or you will be removed from the ride with no refund in tickets." Karen: "Don't tell me." Karen's friend: "Stop it. Karen, just sit in the middle." She complained the whole time walking to the middle seats and then pulled down the bar. I was thinking it was time to get a manager over, but I didn't want to bother them with her. Once I got everyone seated, I closed all the seat bars. When I was checking the seats, Karen's one was on the loose side, so I pushed it in a little to make it tighter. Karen: "You're trying to kill me first. You left my seat open, now you're making it so I can't breathe." I ignore her and keep checking seats. When I finally start the ride, I slowly rock it, and Karen is screaming to take her off, so I make the ride go faster, doing full circles now. Halfway during the ride, Karen screams, "Stop the ride, you ducking idiot!" She wants me to stop it? Fine with me, I park the ride at the top of the ride like I do when closing, but keeping the ride on. The 6 others on the ride weren't scared. The ride stopped. Karen started screaming, bloody murder crying, and begging to be let down. The parents watching know what she said before their kids and know what's going on and start laughing. After around 30 seconds, she is screaming, "Let me down still." So I do. On the fastest setting, I start the ride spinning full speed. I made the ride a little longer since all the kids were having fun. Before I open the seats, I scream a warning. Me. Wait for the bars to be fully open and stay above your head before getting up. Stay seated. Karen pushes it up and gets up, having the bar fall back down and hit her in the head. Her friend laugh at her and get up, walking her off the ride. The next one is an entitled People's Story. Story takes place in the US. So let's turn back the clock to the early 1990, before Clinton had taken office, before the internet, before mobile phones with cameras. My father, an avid entrepreneur and classic hustler, was running a janitorial firm that serviced many of the business in our city. At the time when this story took place, Dad had maybe 5 clients, which included a car dealership, 2 banks, and 2 community buildings. At the time, the firm was small, with 4 employees, with Mom being on staff with him. Keeping in mind he was trying to keep a family afloat, so he was always looking for another client. A local office firm/building was introduced to Dad with the possibility of expansion to other floors. The better part was that this building was located in the general area near the others, so this meant he could clean this one on the way to another. He and the manager sat down and created a contract and what work would be done. At first, during negotiations, they started very, very vague, which should have been a red flag to Dad. Dad got this lady to narrow down to the core of what they really wanted done. Basically, floors. Vacuum carpet and dust mop any waxed ones, trash cans, polishing, furniture, knobs, floors, separate any recycling, and upkeep any bathrooms. Dad would have to come in every weekday night, and he got additional pay for coming in on weekend if he was needed. Dad quoted a price and the two signed a contract. Not 1 month into the contract, Dad gets an additional added on. He got paid an extra bit to clean a kitchen area. Dad thought he'd scored and had a nice client. 2nd month goes by and Dad gets called in by the boss lady. Boss lady: "Mr. Green, have you been paying attention to your work?" Dad: "Yes." Boss lady: "Well, I'm getting complaints from my staff that you haven't been doing your duties. I'm wondering what's going on here." Dad: "Like what?" Boss: "Well, one of my workers asked if you'd water his desk plants when you're making your rounds. He left you a note." Dad: "It's not in our contract, boss lady. It'll only take you a few more moments." To this, Dad inwardly groans and rolls his eyes. This was going to be one of those clients whom is going to push him for this little crap. Dad: "I'll give it some thought and maybe, but it's not in our contract, and if it starts costing me time, then we'll need to revisit this." So my dad returns that night to check each desk more thoroughly. Almost everyone in this 25-cubicle office had a little note on their desk with some kind of extra task. My father did not do any of the extra tasks. Why? Because it wasn't in the contract. Dad contacts the boss lady. Dad was asked to meet with her. Boss lady: "Now, can't we agree for you to do these extra tasks?" Dad: "Because it's not in the contract and it'll cost me time to do it, Dot." The few moments are really a few minutes, and since almost everyone in the office is asking for little favors, then it adds up to an extra hour a night or more. I think we're going to have to rethink this contract and how much my company is being compensated if... He didn't get that far. The lady held up her hand and told Dad to continue with his work. Those notes on people's desks kept appearing every day for the next 4 months. Dad ignored them. Dad kept getting calls. Dad finally had a sit down with her and explained he was ready to cancel the contract. The boss lady caved fast and promised never to bring this up again. No more complaints, no more little notes. At the start of month 5 into the contract, Dad gets called in by the boss lady. She was pissed that my dad had missed a desk. My dad was astounded. He cleans this place personally. He never normally misses a spot. But again, he's human, so it can happen. So Dad asks to be shown the desk. 1 cubicle is a total mess. My father cleaned it and apologized, but wondered how the heck it happened. This became a regular thing. Little messes would start showing up all across the building. Food wrappers in secret places, product packaging thrown in places like for razors, comb, batteries, etc. Food items missing from the kitchens. That last month had become a nightmare. The straw that broke the camel's back was when Dad was called in by a very irate boss lady. Dad took it upon himself to just cancel the contract. He got his keys and paperwork to dissolve the contract. He drove to the office. The lady marched Dad to a bathroom and showed how it was a sty. The bathroom had shaving cream, hair trimmings, a discarded towel, and a lot more. It was as if a bum had decided to shower in the bathroom, using only the hand sink, and left a mess to what Dad described as a hurricane. This time, Dad raised his hand before the boss lady could trash him or his company. The one thing he couldn't stand was himself, or the company being called incompetent for something like this. Dad handed her the keys, had her sign she had them, and then he left. 2 weeks later, Dad was reading the paper when he found a headline that perked his interest: How to Live Free Out of Your Cubicle. As the article read, a local newspaper man had gone undercover and taken on the role as salaryman. His plan was to prove you can live out of your cubicle. He had scouted out a place with little to no security, gotten a key to the place after being hired, and memorized Dad's pattern at night. He made sure not to be around when Dad was cleaning. He'd sleep in his cubicle, he'd shower in the bathroom, and buy from local convenience stores. The newspaper man had claimed to have lived in that office for 2 months without my dad nor the company knowing. Dad immediately calls a friend, and the friend gets back to him rather quick. The paper days before printing called the office building firm for comment. Boss Lady got reamed by the building owner and the actual business owner. Boss Lady was forced into an early retirement. A year later, Dad was in a grocery store getting food when he spotted Boss Lady. She turned embarrassed, pink-red, and hid her face while walking to avoid Dad. Dad spotted her again as she was paying for her groceries. As soon as her eyes met Dad's, she looked in any direction and practically ran out the door. Dad's company still exists to this day and still services many companies and still a few of its core clients. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.